All right, I think I'm going to get started here, if everyone is ready. All right, my name is David Fatula, and I'm the Director of Technical Services at Island Stone. And today we're going to be talking about glass tile and pools. And usually that presentation is 2 to 3 hours. So we're going to do a speed run today. It's only going to be about 20 minutes. I'm going to ask you to save your questions till the end. And my booth is right back there. You see the other bald, handsome guy waving his arm? I'll talk about putting tile in pools as long as you want to. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about, whether it's glass or stone or porcelain. I've been in the tile industry since I was 15. I was a tile setter for 15 years and have been on the technical side of the business for another 18. So what I'm talking about today is stuff that I've actually done, installed tile in pools. So this is a new presentation and it actually has some animation, which I'm not used to. So today we're going to talk about first manufacturing, then mounting, test results, bonus features, installation materials, and installation. And this is a really high-level view of those things. What my goal today is to basically give you a primer, things to look for when you're specifying glass tile in a pool. And it's basically going to introduce you to those topics, and then I'm always available to talk about installing tile in pools. And not only Island Stone product, but any manufacturer's product, because my goal is to see successful glass tile installations. And if you talk to people, you've probably heard some horror stories. And that can be bad installation, it can be bad product, but that's bad for the tile industry, because the last thing we want to see is plaster going up to the coping. And there's nothing more spectacular than an all-glass tile pool. So that's my goal today for your takeaway. So what I'm going to start with is manufacturing. And what I'm talking about at this point is based on the glass tile manufacturing standard, 137.2. And everything related to installation comes out of the manufacturing standard. And there are 3 primary manufacturing processes. There's low temperature coated, fused, and cast. And what separates those 3 categories is how the color is applied to the glass and the temperature what it's produced. And you're going to hear me reference red flags periodically today. And one of the red flags, if you talk to a manufacturer and they can't tell you that information like that, that's a concern. That's a red flag. Because not all types of glass tile should really be installed in a pool. Generally speaking, low temperature coated glass tile, which is sheet glass that has the coloring fused to the back, below 1,000 degrees. It says 1,022 is the technical amount, but it's generally below 1,000. That generally isn't specified for pool use, because those are the products where you can see some discoloration in the backing on the back of the tile. Usually it's fused at around 450 degrees, and it cross-links the polymers, fancy word, but that's what happens, but it doesn't really bond it to the back of the glass, and that's really important if you're going to put it in a submerged application. Submerged application is the most demanding spot to put a tile product, so you want a well-made glass tile if you're going to do that. Fused glass tile, manufactured between 1,023 and 1,599. So that's once again sheet glass where the coloring is bonded to the back of the tile, but it's actually fused into the surface, hence the name fused glass tile. And it's a much more durable product than a low temperature coated tile. And it's, that's what I have up here today. This is a fused back tile, and the coloring is applied to the back. So when you look at it from the side, they all look about the same, but the coloring's on the back, and this product is an Island Stone product, has a protective coating on the back as well. Not all fused glass tile should go in a pool either. So once again, you need to ask the manufacturer if there's no information provided, is this a fused back product and can it go in a pool? And you should really get that in writing. And if there's any delay in that process, that's a concern, red flag. Then there's cast glass tile. That's where you take all the materials, blend it up in a furnace, and then cast it into the shape. And that's a through body tile generally. A lot of times it's translucent. So that can go in a pool, but once again, you want to confirm with the manufacturer because there are limitations. Every manufacturer has their own limitations in regards to their product. So translucent for opaque, that's something to be aware of when you're installing glass tile in a pool. An opaque glass tile is a little bit more forgiving because you can't see the color of the setting material. Hey Vito, if you can't, if the trowel marks aren't flattened, you can see that. Or if the thin set starts to absorb moisture and change color, that's going to be a concern. So if you're specifying a translucent tile for a pool, make sure that you've had the conversation with the installer about the setting material and how to properly install the product. And then size range. So within the manufacturing standard, the size range that is covered is a 1/4 by 1/4 square inch, so that's 0.68, or 1/4 by 1/4, up to 2 by 2, so 24 inches by 24 inches. And so cast glass tile versus fused, there's some limitations. I think generally the cast glass has a smaller size it goes up to, but for fused it's up to a 2 by 2. And the reason I point that out is because there's some misinformation traveling around about what you install in a pool as it relates to the size of the product. So that's my little joke. And we all know size does matter. But when it comes to glass tile in a pool, if someone tells you that there's a limitation that's set by the tile industry, that is incorrect. There is no standard set by the tile industry that says you can't put an 8 by 8 in a pool. You're the manufacturer, you decide you can put up to a 24 by 24 in a pool, but there is nothing set by the TCNA, by the ANSI committee that says there's a limitation for the size. So if that comes up in a presentation by a salesperson, that is inaccurate. Island stone goes up to 8-inch long tile. There's some sizes when it gets longer, the bigger the tile, the less forgiving it is of substrate movement. So other manufacturers may have some limitations, but it's not set by the tile industry. So there are 3 basic types of mounting. There's paper face mounted, film faced, and mesh mounted. And this is another point where there's some misinformation traveling around the tile industry. So paper face mounted product generally has to be used if you're installing a translucent tile so you don't see the mesh. It's a little bit more expensive to install because it takes more time. You need to be removing the paper while you're installing. It has the advantage to have maximum adjustability with a paper face mounted product. But it is a little bit more costly and it requires a higher level of experience from the tile setter. And not every tile setter wants to put in a paper face mounted product. So once again, that should be discussed in the bidding phase. If it's going to be paper faced, you need to allow more money to install that product. Then there's film face mounted. Film face mounted, once again, translucent tile generally. And it's a little bit easier to install, but you have to come back and remove the film later. You get 100% bond to the back of the tile, which is nice, but you have limited adjustability because you can't pull the film until the tile's cured for 24 hours, and then you can't really adjust it you can't adjust it at all. You can do a little bit of adjustment during the process by slicing through the film, but that takes some time, and you really need to have very consistent trays for your mounting so that when you're installing, the grout lines are consistent. And then there's mesh mounted product, which is really the one that there's some misinformation about. You can absolutely install mesh mounted product in a pool. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars testing mesh mounted products to confirm they can be used. And this is important because there's different preferences from tile setters, and what we've experienced at Island Stone is most tile setters want to install a mesh mounted product. So we've worked really hard on our mesh mounted product to make sure it can be successfully installed in a pool. So the things you need to look for are alkali resistant mesh and non-water soluble glue. So those things are going to have a long-term impact on the performance of the installation. And then the next thing you need to look for is to confirm the bond strength of the mesh to the back of the tile. And that comes in related to the test results. So I'm going to skip down to the bond strength isn't on here. There's something missing from my slide, so I'm just going to talk about bond strength. So the bond strength is a test that's in the manufacturing standard for glass tile, 137.2, designation is 7.7, and what that does is it either qualifies the setting material or the mounting assembly. So you take 8 samples that are 4x4, you send them to the lab, they install them on 8 concrete blocks, and they let them cure for 21 days, and then they submerge 4 of them for 7 days. And then after 7 days, they shear all the samples. So they take the sample out of the water, within a minute they put it in the shear machine, and then they apply force on the edge of the tile and see how much force it takes to pop the tile off. And the standard in the manufacturing standard, or the requirement, is that it be above 100 psi, and that's for the submerged wet sample. For the dry sample, it needs to be above 150 psi. So there is a designation in the manufacturing standard that qualifies the performance of the product for use in a submerged application. And that's really important. So not only when you talk to the manufacturer, do you want to confirm it's alkali-resistant mesh and non-water soluble glue, but you want to confirm they've done the testing to guarantee performance from their product. That's why I, as Island Stone, can warranty our product in a submerged application. Above the water line, all tile pool, however many square feet you want to install, if it's installed per our recommendations, we will provide a warranty. And that's what you're looking for from the manufacturer of the product. So once again, I'm here to support glass tile in a pool. So these are the questions that you should be asking. Hey, what are the test results for your glass tile? And these documents up here has all the information for Island Stone, but you can clearly use this as a reference if you want to email another manufacturer and say, hey, what's your water absorption results? Impervious, breaking strength, above 250 pounds of force, freeze-thaw resistance, pass, 300 cycles, thermal shock resistance, pass. Those are the test results that you're looking for, and when you look at the standard, and I know I keep going back to the standard, but the reason I am is because there's no equivocation, it's not ambiguous. These are the things that, the test results that you need to receive if you're putting it in a pool. And when we think about a tub enclosure, you have a failure that goes in a tub enclosure or a shower, a couple $1,000s to fix. Pool tile failure to fix starts at $10,000 because you got to drain the pool, take the plaster out, and then replace the tile. So the last thing you want to see is product that shouldn't be installed in a pool result in a failure. So these are once again the test results. And then dynamic coefficient of friction. We're going back to one more thing there's a lot of confusion about. From the tile industry, there is no standard for a dynamic coefficient of friction for an exterior application. You've all heard of 0.42. That applies to an interior level surface expected to be walked upon when wet. The area when you step out of a shower onto the floor, that's expected to be walked upon when wet. It should be 0.42 or higher. Now, there are certain municipalities that have established a DCOF requirement for pools and exterior applications, particularly in Florida. And they range. The reason I didn't put a number up there is because it changes by municipality. Some have made it 0.6, some have made it 0.5. Obviously, from a tile industry standpoint, we want to get everybody onto the same page, but it took us 10 years just to come up with the test for an interior application that was level. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I think that many companies have slip-resistant finishes, but I don't have a number for you, and it generally only applies to commercial settings. In the residential application, you can basically do what you want because the homeowner is responsible. In a commercial application, you really need to know what the municipality or the inspector is going to require for a slip-resistant finish. Oh my God, it's 14 minutes already. And I'm just scratching the surface. All right, so bonus features. These are things that aren't required, but are nice add-ons for a pool tile line. The first is 6-inch formats. So the standard water line is 6 inches. When you start to look at pool builders, they lay everything out in that increment. So when they do a raised bond beam, they go in 6 inches and they say, okay, I need 5 courses up. 5 6-inch courses, that's 30 inches. So you want to be looking for a product, like the Island Stone product, where it's easily manipulated into that dimension. So this is 12 rows by 12 rows. You simply cut it in half, and you have your waterline tile. Or when you're going up the bond beam, you can install it as a 12 by 12. Everybody loves, oops, sorry Val, I'll buy it. So this is your 1 by 2 offset. Once again, slice it in half. And now you have a 6-inch water line with one floppy piece. So that's what you want to be looking for when you're looking at how the sheet comes and the dimensions of it. Trim pieces. People really like, if you're doing the inside of a spa, not to have a hard 90, to have a piece of quarter round. Mounted is nice so that it's easily installable. So you can see the mesh on the back. And then a slip-resistant finish. So those are often available as an add-on where they fuse frit into the surface of the tile, and then it provides a more slip-resistant finish. Bottom of a 3-foot pool, I don't think you need a slip-resistant finish because of the weight of the water holding you up, or the volume of the water. But on a Baja shelf that has 3 inches of water on it, definitely would recommend a slip-resistant finish. So that's something you have to think about, like where's the tile going? Water line, no need for a slip-resistant finish. Baja shelf with some steps down into the pool, maybe something you want to consider. So installation materials. We could spend an hour and a half just talking about all the various options, but these are the high points. It must be recommended for a submerged application, and you'd be surprised at how many products are out there that aren't, and it doesn't say it in their documentation. So if you want to use a product for a pool and it doesn't say recommended for use in a submerged application, you need to email the technical services department and ask them, is it recommended for that application? If you guys don't want to do that, I'll do that for you. I like actually making that call. I like asking the question. So you have a pool you're installing, call me up. 3 o'clock Pacific is the best time to call me. I'm having my afternoon cup of coffee. I put my feet up on the desk and we start talking about putting tile in pools. So recommended for submerged application. Think about using products from the same manufacturer. So setting material, waterproofing, grout, sealant. Then you get a system warranty, which is really important. If you use custom building products, thin set, and Latticrete grout, and Mapei sealant, they're all going to say it's the other manufacturer's product. So think about that when you're specifying the material. Waterproofing. There are some waterproofers that should not be used in a submerged application. And some waterproofings are very good products, but they require an all-tile pool. So if you look at our installation instructions, everything that we recommend at Island Stone has been, we've worked with the manufacturer and we've confirmed that it can be used in those applications. Last but not least, cure times. And this, for someone who's been a tile setter, this is the one that frustrates me the most. It takes no skill to cure a tile installation. It takes a lot of skill to make a 8-inch round hot tub perfectly round and the same dimension, but I can cure a pool from my lazy boy with my feet up while I'm watching Game of Thrones. So put it in the spec, put it in the quote that the pool must be cured for 21 days after grouting or the manufacturer's recommendation to ensure performance. Because if you don't, what happens is the setting material can re-emulsify, the grout can start to re-emulsify, and it significantly decreases the performance of the installation. And I always tell installers, use that information to your advantage because your competitors are not curing the pool the right amount of time. So when you explain to your customer, hey, I gotta wait 21 days before we plaster, and here's why, then they go ask your competitors, are they gonna cure the pool for 21 days? They say, nope. That voids the warranty from the manufacturer of the glass and the manufacturer of the setting material. So cure time should not be a hindrance. I know Bobby has a birthday party coming up, but Bobby will have a birthday party next year, and do you want your pool to last for 20 years? I do. So think about curing it for 21 days or the manufacturer's recommendation. And there are setting materials that cure more quickly, so you can always consider a rapid setting thin set or an epoxy. I don't know what this slide is. Oh, installation. So I panicked. So installation. So this is the method that Island Stone recommends. And if you read my quick bio or the description, I worked on the standard for the tile industry for installing tile in a pool. It's called P601, and there's a second one, P602. So we proposed that in 2011. It was the only method that was unanimously accepted, which I'm particularly proud of. But it's what we've used for the past 12 years. I think that we're going to make some revisions to it this summer when we go back to the handbook meeting. But our method is based on the industry standard, which provides us some backup if there's ever an issue. This isn't just what Island Stone recommends, it's what the tile industry recommends. Certainly not the only manufacturer that's recommending this method, but we've gotten together as a group and decided this is going to give you the best chance of success. And I know that it works because I've done it and my pools are still in use today. So you have your interior, you have your concrete tank, and then the first layer that goes on the tank is the primary waterproofing. It's generally a spray applied penetrating colloidal silicate. And what that does is it densifies the concrete, resists positive and negative hydrostatic pressure, and reduces efflorescence. I think it's the most important layer in a pool. Then there's the mortar bed bond coat and the mortar bed. So a shotcrete gunite tank is not, the pneumatically applied concrete is not applied in a way that's consistent or tileable. So you need to bring the surface into a tile-ready state. You do that by floating on a mortar bed. That mortar bed needs to be bonded to the tank. So that's why it's 2A and 2B. Then you have your secondary waterproofing. This is a different style of product, and this separates the movement of the tile from the movement of the substrate and also protects the mortar bed, particularly in a freeze-thaw zone. But they're two layers of waterproofing, but they do different things in the pool. Then you have your setting material, once again recommended for a submerged application. You have your Island Stone product. You have your grout. I prefer high performance grouts over the just standard sanded, but like a high performance cement based grout or an epoxy. And then you have your movement joint. That movement joint is really important between the coping and the water line because you get differential movement. The coping's moving like this, the water line's moving like that. I guarantee that's going to crack if it's not a flexible sealant. Once again, when I do install presentations with tile setters, we stop and talk about movement joints for 15 minutes because they always want to talk about that. I think it's a really important topic. It's often overlooked. There are places they should go. There are places they don't need to go. Once again, going fast, high level, call me. We'll talk about movement joint placement. I'm 3 minutes over. So I think that's it for today. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your patience and listening to me. That's my contact information. Write it down. Come by the booth. We can talk more about installing tile in pools. I have 2 documents up here, our spec sheet for our lava glass tile line and our installation instructions. Feel free to take one of each. And thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you for the clapping. We're going to do that again one more time. Question? Sure.
You've got your interior pool finish, and then you've got your tile above that.
Yep.
But you've got no grout joint between those two. So are you assuming that that interior pool finish is perfectly flat and perfectly straight before you do that?
So I think that that's an excellent point, and I'm going to change how my slide is constructed. It's the first time I've used animation. So you install the water line first. You're not installing the pool finish. Once the water line is done, you come and plaster the pool, and they run a row of red tape on the tile, and they plaster right up to the water line, and that's how it's done. So you're not installing the pool finish first, you're installing the tile first. So,
but are you going to get a crack there?
No. For whatever reason, it has to do with the stability of the substrate and the plaster finish. You don't get a crack there, and it's actually one of the reasons that when you do a tile repair in a pool, you've got to take the plaster out because you have to tile up or plaster up to the bottom of the water line. That does not need to be a movement joint. It has to do with how the plaster is constructed and I've never seen there a crack there unless they've taken the water line out and not taken the pool finish out. That worries you.
It does.
I can tell you that I've looked at a lot of pools, and that's just not a spot that cracks, because the strength of the installation is the concrete tank. The plaster finish is, one, it's under the water, so there's very little expansion and contraction. So it's a very static environment. Below the water line is static. The degree that it changes in temperature is minimal. But above the water line and that area that gets wet and dry is where you have more of a concern. But I'm going to ask the question to a plaster expert why it doesn't crack there, because I honestly don't know the answer. I just know it doesn't, and I don't like not having an answer for you. So I need your card, so I'll follow up with you at a later date. But it doesn't crack. Any other questions? I did an amazing job if there are no questions. All right, thank you.